Good.
And welcome
We're
to
doing
down,
section 4, right?
and welcome to Down the Alley. This is PMAC.
And Ted T.S. Spirides.
And Katie.
And another week, another section. Yes, Katie, we're doing section 4 this week. A big section, a section that there's plenty to talk about. Really excited to talk about it. But first, we're coming off a big weekend. A big weekend. I think there's a lot to dive into, this week as we hosted the summit, the Down the Alley Coaches Summit. What a turnout! What a show! The girls, the boys, the coaches, the speakers. Yeah, a lot to dive into here. What do you guys got? The summit was what a turnout.
The summit was awesome. I think I'll be honest. I didn't really know what to expect, to be honest with you. Like last year it was a really big learning curve to like put on an event. And this year, like you and PMAC and Katie both did a great job with the planning. So I wasn't as hands-on this year. And so that was like nice to kind of just like show up and things were just done. So props to you guys for doing that. But um like we had some repeat speakers, we had some new people, didn't really know what to expect, and it was better than I could have imagined in the sense of I learned a lot. It was great to, even these are competing coaches in the high school league. They're our colleagues. Like for 60 minutes, one game a year, we want to kill each other, right? Or even if we like most of them, we don't even play anyways, and we want to compete and push each other to be better. But at the end of the day, we have the same problems and headaches and successes and failures as everybody else. And it's great to be able to connect on that. And it's such a small community that it's not like you go to places every night and see 100 lacrosse coaches can talk shop. It's rare to have that many Minnesota lacrosse coaches in one room together. So I had a great time. I think I got to know some coaches a little bit better. It was great to connect with some of the old friends. It's great to see what new stuff they're cooking up. And yeah, it was a good time.
Yeah, to your point, Ted, about sitting next to people you compete against, like shout out to the two coaches I spent a lot of time with, not on purpose, but I sat next to an Edina coach for a couple of the speakers throughout the day. And I listened and, sat next to at the social and talked a lot with the Benilde coach. So those are two teams that Prior Lake is quote unquote probably rivals with or, plays against each other late in the season almost every single year. So if I can do that, I think anybody can do that. You know what I mean? Like no matter what
Yeah.
school or rival or whatever. So really good point on that. And again, it was nice to reconnect with coaches that I already knew and to meet again a couple of the rival coaches. Katie, what was it like maybe from the girls coach perspective? Like awesome turnout on the girls side too, and I sat in a couple of their speakers and was really impressed.
Yeah, it was a fun day. Like we didn't do um we didn't do girls last year, so last year I felt like I was just kind of like running around helping behind the scenes stuff. I think I actually had to leave and go coach for a while. Last year I was trying to rack my brain about like I was like, why was last year so hectic? And I think Ted made a good point that like we've hosted tournaments, we've hosted tryouts, obviously, but there is just something different about hosting something with adults that they're a lot less like hands on. Like once people got there and checked in, they had very minimal questions. It was more of just kind of connecting with people, and that's what I love the most. Of like, these are people and I've worked with now for years, and you know a little bit about their lives, but um it's like it's fun to actually sit there and like catch up about the things that are happening. Like some coaches, you know, kids or like new babies, other coaches I've learned um like I've just met recently and kind of gotten to connect with really a lot just in the last year, but other coaches I've known for 5, 6 years now. And so it's fun to like actually have a sit down moment with them as opposed to just like high fiving at the end of the game, or communicating via email of like, when are we going to play each other? Um, or like taking up each other's times at tournaments and stuff like that. And I think it really is just like, we're all here doing the same thing, and I think we all have a lot of the same woes and triumphs that each other does, and nobody's talking about it. And so I think that the camaraderie of like, oh yeah, that happens to us all the time, or like we had this situation within our team, and really expanding the net of who you can reach out to. And I know in like Coach Kelsey's talk of like that's how we workshop things, like especially head coach to head coach or different levels. Like it's nice to get, and she mentioned this, it's nice to get an outside perspective from someone of like, how would you handle this situation, especially those interpersonal things. You know, and it's also nice to talk about lacrosse stuff too, but I love like the interpersonal exchanges and really getting to know these coaches off the field.
One couple shout outs before we move into the section stuff. Um, on the boys' side, Irondale staff fully loaded at the summit. The Blake boys staff fully loaded at the summit. New Prague had boys and girls coaches there. The Totino Grace St. Anthony Village full staff there. There was representation, a lot of East and North. So there was Matamidi, there was Cretan Durham Hall, there was Park, there was just a lot of, like, if it was near Prior Lake, there was not a coaching staff there. If it wasn't near Prior Lake, they were there. So props to all the and then on the girls side, sorry, I forgot. Wayzata brought a bunch of coaches. Hill Murray was there. I talked with the Hill Murray girls coach a little bit. I wasn't in that room a ton, so I don't know all the specifics. I think Chan was there.
Chaska
And
almost full
so
staff was there.
Chaska, Chaska full staff. Rosemount, I think, had some people. So shout out to the programs and the staffs that made this an event for everybody to go and learn. And it could be like talking points for your staff in the future. And, you know, maybe you only learned one thing, but, you know, you can take that into the season and make your team a little bit better. So shout out to those ones. Those were just off the top of my head. Thank you to everyone who was there. If I missed you, I apologize. But there were definitely some like full crews there, and that was awesome to see.
To keep the shout outs rolling, um, you know, Katie mentioned it. We were mostly hands off. In the morning, I was kind of running around a little bit, but it was much in year two from our side of things. It was much more hands off. And that's thanks to everyone we partnered with, starting with the speakers. Speakers killed it. Speakers killed it.
Yep.
Two, the other partners, we can start with our sponsor, Old Southern Barbecue. People were ranting and raving. I can tell you, people were like, "Oh, like a lot of new hands and mouths got to taste the OSB barbecue, and the reviews were high." Don't ask
And
me.
also someone who wasn't
Yep.
new to it, Coach Ashley, a speaker, lives
Okay,
right by there. Edina one and loves a bowl. She was repping the bowl. She's
Yeah.
like, they have a good bowl
My wife
situation.
loves
so what's the bowl
my wife
situation? This is
loves
off
the
the cuff, folks. This is off the
Soul
cuff.
Bowl.
What's the
Yeah,
bowl?
this
Yeah,
is
she was like, because someone's like, oh, Old Southern, like, oh, I love barbecue. Coach Anna was like, I love barbecue. Get me there. And then they were talking about a tournament they were at for MN Elite, I think, that or something. They were traveling together, reminisced about some barbecue. But Coach Ashley was like, yeah, they have a great bowl situation. And she's a frequent bowl connoisseur at at the Dinah location, I think. So this was not new to her, but she still loved it. So I think she was a repeat customer, but loved a bowl. I don't know what's in them. I think you get corn. It's like a burrito bowl, but it's a barbecue bowl.
So Coach Anna, what staff is she from?
Coach Anna's on the Benilde staff.
Okay, so Benilde staff
Coach
loves a good,
Ashley is the UST women's club coach, college.
and they both like the bowls.
Yeah.
I think Ashley likes the bowls.
Ashley likes the bowls.
Anna didn't know about Old Southern Barbecue, I don't think.
Okay,
But
so
now she
Anna
does.
knew Ashley bowl. Ted, what
Loves
did
bowl.
you have? Or what were you about to say?
Oh, I was just saying my wife, yeah, my wife loves, it's called the Soul Bowl there, and it's like a mashed potato base, and they throw different meat on there and like the fire roasted corn and the coleslaw, and it's a, I don't know, it's that's what my wife likes, so I can usually be like, "Hey, do you want me to go pick up a soul bowl for you?" And she's like, "Yes." And then I'm like, "Great, now I can grab brisket and wings and all the other things." And so it's a good sell for me. But yeah, they do have a nice bowl situation if that's um more your style. And I will say, as someone who's been there a handful of times now, I hadn't had their mac and cheese yet. That was just like one side I haven't had because I'm not, that's not usually my go-to. And we had it and it's
Yeah, I could have
fantastic.
eaten that whole
That
thing
is
by
going to
myself.
be on the, I know.
I
So
I think their
I'm going to be
best
getting the
meat
mac and
is
cheese
those links.
Those links. So
those hot
so
links.
They're
they sent me like,
spicy.
no, they're great. So they sent me like kind of like, I was like, hey, like we're looking for, the catering option, whatever, yada yada yada. Gave them the spiel. And then so I manipulated the order to get exactly what I wanted there. The links got subbed in, the mac and cheese got subbed in. I subbed in the corn that may or may not have already been on there. But I was like, I want the pork, I want the links, I need the mac and cheese and the corn. And then a Farmington coach, I don't know if anyone got any more muffin tops. He was Coach Soini deleting muffin. I'm like, dude, you're like 5. Like, you make me look big. And he's just deleting
I
muffin
heard
tops.
him walking behind me, and he was like, "God, these are so good." He's not wrong. The
No, he's
most
not wrong.
muffins. When we had it that one time at our house, my dad's like, "Why just a muffin top?" And I'm like, "Why not?
Try
Why not?
one.
Just because you could just pop them in your mouth, and that's the like the buttery part of a muffin. That's the like crispy, yummy, soaked everything up. The bottom part of a muffin is essentially like the cream rises to the top. So the top of a muffin is just like where the magic is. So cut the bottoms off and just create. And then we got into talking, they must have a specific pan to create a muffin top because what do they do with all the bottoms then?
Hey, we'll ask the big man. We'll ask the big man this week. I'm sure he'll give
Yeah,
us
but
the
back
whole
to the links.
shebang on that.
Back to the links. The links, you chirp me all the time for loving a hot dog.
Oh, yes, I
love
do.
hot
Yes, I do.
dogs,
Yes, I do.
and I will eat like, I'm not talking like an Oscar Mayer. I'm talking about like a Kraft, like grass fed beef hot dog, no sugar, no nitrates. We're paying $10.99 for 4 links. Don't tell PMAC that's why our grocery bill is so big. But I love hot dogs. I always have. And like on a hot summer day, hot dog, baked beans, chips. I love it. So the links provide everything with a hot dog provides, but just like a poppable, they're like poppable hot dogs, and they have the perfect crunch on the outside. I love how they slice them on the bias. They're sliced nice and like not too thick, not because
Yeah.
honestly, I think if I were to get a whole link, I wouldn't like it. I like that they're already sliced. The outside casing is just crunchy enough. They set your tongue on fire. They are not. Someone was like, "Oh yeah, those had me crying. Those are a little zingy. They're spicy, but they have so much flavor that I kind of crave those with a corn muffin top is the perfect combination of like the crunch, the butter, the spicy, the sweet, like I could eat that. I'll just make a bowl of 3 muffin tops and like 2 links, and I'm happy. And mac and cheese because I love
And
mac and cheese. Get the
speaking
links.
of yeah, so speaking of the links, there was like 6 pounds of hot
I
links left
know.
over,
They're in
so,
our fridge.
um,
We
moving on to
have
our
them.
next they're in your oh,
So
you
We
do
took
have
we're
them,
them.
bringing
We
okay,
took
so
the
because I was
so
gonna
I
say,
was going to bring
I
this up.
forgot
We're bringing them over for lunch, and you're going to make your shebang that you do with
What's
the
your
okay.
leftovers.
shebang?
Yeah,
What's your shebang?
I know that we put them in the, like, the fridge, and I was like, "Man, the" so speaking of, like, another shout out as we
Oh
move into
yeah.
this, Prior Lake High School, obviously a huge aspect to this, like, thank you to them for letting us host there, and I thought that the Prior Lake office staff got gifted about 6 pounds of hot links because I didn't know if we actually grabbed them, but it sounds like you did,
Yeah,
so sorry about
thank
that.
you to Prior Lake High School. Thanks to the AD. Thanks to the entire staff there. They were
Lakers
getting us
Live
table.
let us use their
Well,
audio and
we're getting
visual
to that.
equipment.
We'll get to that. Um, the janitors and things were helping us with tables, making sure we're comfortable in the rooms. Um, but don't show the AD and all them this clip because we did take the leftovers. So
We
don't show
took
them
the
the thank you
leftovers.
part. Don't show them the food part. But yeah, huge shout out to them. To Katie's point, um, Game Time Media, along with the Lakers Live equipment. That was another huge partnership where we didn't have to be hands on with the video and capturing all the content for the day. That is massive. I saw a couple not clips, but like I took a peek at a couple videos already that were sent over. Very well done. Looks great. And Ted, Katie, and I didn't have to man the cameras. Um, Last but not least, the social at the point, great setup. They got the look Maryland and Syracuse. Yeah, I planned that out. I was talking to Gary Gate back in December. Was like, hey, February 17th. I know you're scheduled Maryland early in the morning at like noon. We need to bump this game back to like 4:35 because we're gonna do a social. And we want to watch the game. And Gary Gate, he was super accommodative. And he got that game pushed back. So, when we were hanging out at the point, having some nachos and things, we got to throw the game on. So shout out to Gary Gate and the point actually on that
And
situation.
Lucas Gratz for serving us.
Great shout out, PL alum, Lucas Gratz, LSM legend, two-time state champion, making sure the coaches were fed, all night long. So, yeah, another great shout out. If I missed anyone or anything, I'm sorry, but also include them because it couldn't have happened the way it did without everyone involved.
What's
Good.
your shebang with
Oh, the
the
shebang.
sausage?
Yeah, what are you making us for lunch?
Oh, I make like a breakfast hash.
Oh yeah,
It's just like a brisket I did it with brisket and hot link, but it would be good with just hot links,
yeah,
honestly.
got it.
Well, without further ado, for what we're actually here for, talking about lacrosse, Minnesota lacrosse, section 4. Section 4. It's been, at least on the boys' side, we'll get into that in a little bit. It's been a kind of a two-headed monster. On the girls' side, I'm really excited to see, what the source has come up with. Again, there's a couple of high-level squads, some public, some private, some I don't know what they are. We've got a mix of teams that are quote unquote hated, some that are loved. I don't know, for Golds' sake, I'm not sure how all of the concession stands are. Maybe that's something we can talk about. I don't have the scouting report on all the different concession stands in this, but I know there's a couple notable ones. On the girls' side, um, well, Katie, I'll kick it over to you. What do we have in section 4 on the girls' side?
Well, we had a big shakeup last year, but no changes this year. So I guess we'll start with the section champs, Stillwater Area High School. They also lost in the state semi final. I think they lost to Benilde in the semifinal to go to. I think it was Benilde versus Stillwater. If I'm excuse me. Um, Not mistaken. Anyways, 2023 they were 14-5 last year. They beat Gentry last year in the section championship. Tons of state appearances, 11 state appearances. So that's huge. It's like they never not go to state out of their section. Strongest youth. And I feel like we talk about their youth program every year. As a 10U coach, I have lost at least 3 big games to Stillwater. I've lost the state championship or semifinal to Stillwater multiple times. I lost to them last year in Viking Goat for the championship game. We beat them, which we found out was like a different team in the regular season, and then I continue to lose to them. So the PLAY Stillwater girls rival is definitely alive, and they beat us a lot. In high school, we tend to be able to pull it off with a win, but if it's we've never had to. I don't know if we've ever had to play them in state. We were there in 2021 and they weren't, but yeah. So we know they feed some other private schools, which is kind of a topic, but still no less a very strong youth program. Source mentions other top programs, it's one class of production out, one class of production in. So they lose 7 2023s. Tori Lilligren, I think is how you say her last name. Look at all these places they're going to. Lindenwood, who knows what's going to happen. So girls Lindenwood diminished too,
I don't
right?
believe so.
Oh, okay. So then they're still alive and well. Ellie Fisher, Emma Nelson, Kira Helenak, maybe. But hey, lots of points, as you say, coming back, and 2025 goalkeeper Rio Atkinson. She's coming back, so I love that. What other points am I missing? Key losses. They lost to Lakeville South. They
Yeah,
lost to Edina. They lost to Prior Lake. They lost to Park in a close game. So that's interesting, but that's non-section. So in terms of section 4,
yeah.
a lot of potential here, in my opinion.
I like Stillwater a lot. Obviously, we've talked about it a few times in the sense of teams that have a tradition of success and tradition of winning, that it's kind of like they just reload every single year, and that culture is instilled. So they're a very difficult team to beat. Combine that with a strong youth program and all those other things. Obviously, the teams that they lost to last year were top 10
Right.
teams. They're not losing to. I mean, they're close with PL. They're close with Lakeville South. Well, Lakeville South kind of crushed them actually, but
We always
close with
play them
PL, close with
first. That's
Edina,
always our first
close.
game, and it's always like such a great game.
I do think they got a nice senior group of 2024s that I think are going to come back and to take on a larger role due to the graduation. But having 25s and 26s in the mix, you can tell that they're a program that the best players are going to be on the field. They have the depth to compete, and getting your goalie back is huge. And then this Macy Neubauer headed to Florida Southern. She's a senior, but 50 points, 35 draw controls. So I would say that's a key position to have somebody come back. They're just one of those teams that if you want to win Section 4, you're going through Stillwater. You got to go through
When I
Agreed. And
look,
Stillwater.
one thing to note, I think they have a new head coach. I think Coach Allie's out, I think with a baby, but don't quote me on that. We love Coach Allie. She was on the pod, German Shorthair Pointer family. But I think their assistant is taking over, if I'm not mistaken. But I don't think that's going to really slow them down at all, to be quite honest.
when I look at this team, you look at like even like their commits that they lose, and their points don't. We look at some squads. They lose their top point getter, and they have 100 points. You look at this team; their scoring is so balanced. Their top scorers getting like 50 points, which is great. I'm not discounting discounting that at all. There you keep going down the line. You have how many players getting double digit points, 20 plus points, 30 plus points. They have such a balanced attack, it seems like, from the outside looking in. So yeah, you graduate a few of your offensive players. You've got how many to replace it that was on the team last year, plus whatever young players coming up. This is a team in my opinion, a force to be reckoned with for years to come when it's like that. On to the next team, White Bear.
Yeah, it
Go ahead,
seems
Ted.
like there's they play like a team style. When you say all that balanced scoring, is that it's 7 players on offense, and they don't really care who gets the credit. And like it's like that it's systematic at this point, not necessarily personnel driven. And that, like you said, kind of leads to the year after year success because you just plug the next group in.
On to the next team, White Bear Lake, 11-4. They were the number 2 seed last year in Section 4, lost to Gentry Academy in the section semifinals. They have not made state yet. Katie, what do we got out of White Bear Lake?
It's interesting. I feel like we don't really talk about White Bear Lake much. I mean, last year for the boys' game was like the first time I think I'd ever been to their high school. It just doesn't seem like quite the powerhouse for lacrosse yet. I know they have a youth program. Like I think I've seen them out and about. Um, they did lose to Gentry, so questioning if there's haters out there why we're talking about them second. The source deep dived. Um, I gotta find my spot here now. Um, they only lose 4 seniors, and none of them were their like top producers. So it looks like they return all of their offensive production and bring back um, their goalkeeper, which I love. So I think that in the source, and I'll agree with the source in that. Um, Great recipe for success. They have a good strength of a schedule. They play Hillmurray, Cretin Durham Hall, Park of Cottage Grove, Woodbury, Stillwater, St. Croix Prep, Eastridge, Blake, Montevideo, making them a stronger like schedule coming up. Also, there's some other schools that haven't really posted their schedule. So I think that a lot of people coming back, another strong year, I think kind of is a bigger testament to where they're going to land than kind of pleading the fifth in my opinion. But again, we don't really talk about a lot of White Bear Lake stuff like really on the lacrosse side. I mean, yes, on the boys we do. So I'll say that again on the girls side because I feel like last year the boys we really were talking about them. Again, I don't really remember what I say ever 5 minutes after we stop recording, so we could talk about them. I should go back and listen to our section 4 boys, but I like if they're an underdog and if we're over committing them, I like putting them kind of next in line. And I like seeing a new team in the tournament. I like seeing a new team some new colors involved in those logos too. And I think just notable players coming back.
I have a note on
Again,
that.
okay,
I've got a
sure.
note on the players coming back, combined with not
Goalkeeper,
making state yet. Um,
yeah,
not to tease, or skip over these other teams and get to the rankings, but White Bear Lake girls is my number one team in this section. They're my number
is
one
it?
preseason pick. Um, and there's a lot of Detroit Mercy bias coming with that. Detroit Mercy by their top two scorers coming back. Detroit Mercy commits, and this
Yeah,
Beverly Peterson, she not only puts up points, she's causing turnovers. She's getting ground balls for days. I'm a big fan of the Detroit Mercy picks and commits, and combined with they haven't made state yet. They didn't lose a lot last year. I think this is White Bear Lake girls lacrosse year to punch their ticket to the state tournament.
that's a bold statement, but I like
Clip
it.
it,
You gotta
clip it,
support the Titans.
clip it.
We love Detroit Mercy. We love Detroit Mercy. I think that's super cool that they're going there. D1, and I think that's gonna be super fun for them. Moving on. Do you want to tee it up?
Yeah, I'll tee it up. Gentry Academy, and maybe it looks like maybe they're comboed with Mounds Park Academy, according to says. Last year, a record of 14-1. They were the 3 seed in 2023, going on to lose to Stillwater in the section finals. They've been to state one time in 2022. Yeah, Gentry Academy / Mounds Park Academy. What do we got here, Katie?
So the source put them behind White Bear Lake because I think they're losing, even though they beat White Bear Lake. Let me make sure I'm like looking at this right. Um, I think strength of schedule. Gentry doesn't seem to put their schedule out. Um, White Bear Lake is probably their strongest competition. And even though that, I think what we're saying, why can't I read this right? Um, they only lose 3 seniors. And I think, help me out on this.
Okay, their key
Because
players
I
they
think,
lose. They're losing 3 seniors. One, a stud in Eva Anderson. She's went on
yeah,
to play
D1 Kent State. So
D1 at
that's a
Kent
big
State.
loss.
Huge loss. But look at these key players coming back. You've got a 2026 young buck with
That's why
84
she's not
points
committed
last year.
anywhere.
Yeah, no, she's young, but
Because
yeah,
I was
she's
like,
young.
she's only 2026.
Yeah, so they've got, and then they've got
Another
multiple D1
2026
commits.
goalie.
Yep. So, but in the still on the field, you've got 3 Division 1 commits, one to Louisville, George Mason, Iona, and if these stats are correct, the 2026 goalkeeper, uh, 2 goals against, just over 2 goals against, and a 70% save percentage. That's that. Those are some crazy stats there.
Can I add something here for Gentry?
Yes.
Unbelievable statistics. That goaltending statistics, absolutely insanity. And like 84 points for Hone as a freshman last year is obviously also ridiculous. But nobody scheduled them last year, so they played probably the easiest schedule for their caliber of team that they could have ever played. So I wouldn't
And it
expect
looks like that's the
anything
same
less.
thing this year.
So
There's
they're
no
not in a
PL, there's no
conference.
South. Yeah. They're
They're
playing
not.
Let
4
Ted go.
Wisconsin teams.
They're not in a conference, so they don't get their guaranteed games. And why would I mean? Here's like my opinion of this is why would Prior Lake, Lakeville South, Edina still? Why would they play Gentry? There's no upside if you play
Right.
them and you beat them. You should beat them because you're a big public school. if you
Right.
play them and you lose, then you just screw like there is nothing to gain, everything to lose, and by putting Gentry on your schedule. So that's
Right.
just the reality of it, where not being in a conference can really hurt you. So again, that doesn't take away from my feelings that they're a great team with a ton of individual talent.
And
It
I
just
think
comes
that's
down to
where
like,
those stats come too. Like, I'm not saying they're fudging their stats or anything, but they're they need more competition. I think bottom line they need more competition.
and I
And
think they know that, and they're
yeah,
willing. I think they're willing to play anybody. They want to play the best teams. I just don't know if anybody's really that motivated to put them on their out of conference schedule. So
right.
that's some of those stats may be a little bit gaudy than maybe that they would have in like a normal schedule for a team of their caliber, but nonetheless, they have the talent to be a good team, and they got Division 1 lacrosse players all over the field.
Absolutely. So I maybe it's more of like an individual. They have really, really great lacrosse players. Whether or not they're a contender in this section, yeah, they're high up. But I think that's where I agree with the source that like it just doesn't seem quite as organized and like structured as some of the other teams. And like we can see we can see White Bear Lake's schedule already, and can pose the fact that it's like, okay, yeah, they're going to be a contender in this section where we have nothing really to base off of for Gentry and who they're going to play and how that's going to stack up in terms of a preseason section uh thought we're all doing. Again, this is preseason. This is just what we're going by posting schedules, who's coming back, who did we lose, how many points. We love to add up all those points. I like to make sure the goaltender's coming back. But again, it seems like they have a really, really great group of really awesome lacrosse players, and it might be lacking on like the team side. I personally um would love to know more. The East Side source wanted to be the East Side source, and now they don't even respond, quite honestly. But I will be really interested to see what happens after this 2024 class, what happens to Gentry. We always talk about teams that are 1 year away, maybe with a great group of 25s or 26s, things of those nature. I'm kind of on the opposite of it's going to be really interesting to see what happens to Gentry in the terms of their team and commitment after this 2024 class is gone, because besides those crazy 26s they have in the schedule, it doesn't really look like there's a notable 25 class. And not saying that that's really anything. There's a lot of teams that have kind of gaps in it. But in terms of other groups that are sort of reloading, and year after year having a strong schedule, I think that's it's going to be interesting to see. Call me a hater. I don't really care. I don't think they listen. So they probably
Um,
won't even hear any of this.
yeah, no, it's fine. And I think one thing that'll help with maybe some of those question marks. They had a coaching change a year ago. It appears, that the coaching staff has stayed into place now. So maybe that'll help answer some of those question marks. Just a question. What would it take for them to join a conference, or do they want to join the conference? Do we know how that works?
I have no idea.
Because I think that would
I think
solve
that's the whole
their
issue.
schedule
I
I
think
issue.
think
that's the
it's
whole issue.
I think that would solve their schedule issue.
Yeah.
yeah. I'm sure that, like everything, it has to do with everything
Yeah.
but lacrosse from an
Right,
athletic and academic
right.
perspective. Um, and like I think in order for a conference change to happen, there's like a submission to join, like a request to, like, you gotta like petition to join basically, or like a request for um admittance, like, and you have to probably do some sort of paperwork about your school, and then I believe the ads vote on things like that, on whether like co-ops can happen, whether um you could join a conference. And I don't know if the athletic directors just are it's just the athletic directors that handle conference changes, or if there's other school personnel involved, because it may impact more than just
So I
sports.
just
I don't know. But I guess ADs are
I
activities
pulled up their
directors.
hockey on MN Hockey Hub, and it appears to me that their hockey team is in a conference. This conference is kind of wild. Duluth East.
Okay.
Everyone from Duluth East is in their conference to St. Paul to St. Cloud. So what
I
they're
think there's
logging
a lot
miles.
more
They're logging
stipulations on
miles.
games. Yeah, well, and I think there's a lot more stipulations on games and things in hockey than there is in lacrosse. I honestly think Gentry likes not like following the rules. I think they like being on their own island and kind of just doing their thing, and that's their MO now. And I just wonder too, they're always co-op with someone, and I'm always wondering if that's because of numbers or is that because of I don't know what, but it's like if you're really as strong of a program as you are, and is it the whole school that's always co-opt? Again, there's
No,
so many more questions I have than the program, and I agree. It probably has everything to do with anything but lacrosse to get them into a conference. So quite honestly, their hands could be tied. It could be nothing. They could be petitioning all the time, and nobody even takes the piece of paper from them. Who knows? I don't know. I don't know.
yeah, we don't have the answers to these questions, but it appears I'm looking at their boys hockey that they're a part of a conference. So, maybe their girls lacrosse team at some point can join a conference. I think that would help the schedule issue in
Yeah,
terms
which
of
I
the
think
other
is the
things.
biggest issue in terms of a preseason ranking in what we're going to expect from them. No doubt they're going to put up stats. No doubt they're going to be competitive. It just the competition of who they play is the biggest factor. So in terms of preseason rankings, they're going to be up there, but maybe not quite as high as somebody else because they're just not playing the caliber of teams, and that's that.
On to the next team, Matamidi, record of 9-6. This is a lacrosse community, a lacrosse school. They have been to state one time on the girls' side, the boys' side. Again, we'll get to them, but this is a community that loves lacrosse. They had a couple of key wins. They lose a decent amount, but I like what they bring back. Katie, what do you have on Matamidi?
Not a lot. Again, I don't these Section 4 teams, I don't really like see or hear of, but they have their own little like gauntlet of a section, I think. I think big wins. They beat Eastridge by 1 goal. So that's huge. But then they lost to Cretan, they lose to Hill Murray, they lose to Simley by a lot, they lose to Wiper Lake, and they lose to Stillwater. So these some of these section games for them um maybe are a little tougher. The source ranks them a little higher than I think I would in terms of those, quite honestly, those games they lost. And now they've lost their number one point scorer to D1, Oregon. Crazy. But it looks like, again, they have a pretty balanced returning group. A couple commits. Their goalie's coming back. She's a 25. So she's not quite a young buck, but she's like, she's got some experience, but also a good I feel like they're just going to kind of be average for a couple more years. It doesn't seem like they're always going to be a contender. It doesn't seem like they're ever going to be like counted out. It doesn't seem like they've got this crazy group that they're all going to graduate and then they're going to have nothing. I like that their returners are kind of spread across the board, and I think they'll be competitive. A 9-6 record, that's great. And I think they'll win in quarterfinals, maybe win a semifinal, and still have a really successful season this year.
Next squad, Hill Murray, and I'm reading through I'm reading through the sources stuff here. The source is mad at Hill Murray. The source has been high on Hill Murray, and they right when the source gets hot on them or high on them, they lose maybe a game that they shouldn't have. So the source, to Katie's point on Matamidi, it seems a little high. I think this has to. I think the source is mad at Hill Murray. So I think because of that, maybe Matamidi got a little bump, and Hill Murray's getting a little, pushed down a little bit. Hill Murray last year beating Rosemount. That's a great win, and maybe to that point. But then when things get
And
close, and
Simley.
yeah, and Simley, yeah, no, and Matamita, they beat Matamita last year. So
Yeah.
we and to Ted's point earlier, Ted and I got to talk to one of the Hill Murray coaches. I think they got pieces this year. I think they like where the program is at. Are they going to be able to take that next step and maybe start to stay on the source's good side? I don't know. What are you guys seeing on this?
They return their goalie. I love it. It sounds like hopefully Franny is on the mend. And I think if she's coming back
So
and is
not to break news, but sources that are not the source. Ted, maybe you can confirm. Did they maybe lose the goalie?
oh yeah.
Uh, yeah, I don't know. I missed some of that. I'm
Okay.
having some internet issues. I apologize. So I missed what the
Yes.
question was.
Okay, I I
No, I
I
think it
I
was
feel
the
like I feel like I heard there was a hockey situation,
yep,
and that
yep,
the
Oh,
Hill
yeah,
Murray
yeah.
goalie, which would be a devastating loss,
yep, you're
it
right.
may
You're
have
right.
transferred out,
I
which
think
would
you're right.
that's tough. That's tough. But they might have another goalie coming up. I
They
don't
might.
know, but there's a rumor mill. That's some rumor mill stuff.
You're right. I forgot about that. She went back home. Um, yeah, I'm a little excited about Hill Murray. We had a great conversation with their assistant coach. Thanks to coming out. It sounds like spirits are high with injuries. All of their look at their scores of their losses. Like they're maybe not their Matamidi, but like respectable losses, I'm gonna say. They do lose a lot of points. It sounds like they lose, a good class of seniors, but I like what they're returning more than what they're losing. And I like their game scores that they lost because more than their games that they won. They were all like close enough games, none of them blowout. I think it's a respectable schedule. It gets conference, it's section. So I'm excited to see what Hill Murray's gonna do. And I think it's like if it's a thing about our private school, public school, this might be this might be it for me in this section. Obviously, I think they're the only TG's in this section too. This will be my private school of the section. I think I'd pick Hill Murray over TG, but I'm excited for them, and I think they're a little bit young. But not them. Yeah, they're a little bit young, and I'm okay with that. And so I'm excited to see what's coming up in the pipeline. And I think, again, maybe they're not going to be section champs this year. Maybe they're 1 to 2 years out for me.
Anything to add on the rest of the section? Not to like discount the other teams, but in terms of teams that are really going to compete and whatnot. Any sleepers, to maybe shout out, after this top five, call it.
I think maybe the like next in line, Mounds View. I think don't sleep on them. I think I know they have a great youth program. I feel like I'm always running into Mounds View. They upset Irondale last year in the first round of sections. We love an upset at DTA Nation by a goal. I wonder if that was an overtime goal. So I think that they could be in the running maybe for like I don't know about a top four, but I think maybe five. I'd give them a five spot. It could be between a Hill Murray or a Mounds View. Um, this is an interesting section for me. I'm not gonna lie. I maybe it's just because I'm not well versed with these teams. Like I said, I don't hear a lot about White Bear Lake or quite honestly Hill Murray during the season. Hill Murray I think is kind of creeping in or Mounds View, But shout out to Irondale. We love their coach over there and the boys program too. So I would love to see a different color coming out of this section, but I just spoiler, I don't think it's gonna happen. Oh, I'm looking at boys, but I still don't think it's gonna happen.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Irondale girls are not in this. Yeah, they are. Yeah, they are. So
Yeah,
they only lost by 1 goal. It could have been Irondale, Mounds View.
I think that wraps it up for the girls. Let's give our rankings. Rankings for the girls. Katie, go first. Set the tone.
4-1.
4-1.
I'm gonna go 4 Hill Murray, 3 Matamidi, 2 2 White Bear Lake, and 1 Stillwater.
I'll go.
Want me to go?
Yeah, go ahead, Ted.
I'll go Matamidi 4, White Bear Lake 3, Gentry 2, Stillwater 1.
I will go I'll go Hill Murray 4. I will go Gentry 3, Stillwater 2, White Bear Lake 1.
White Bear Lake. Yeah,
Yeah,
they got those
White Bear
Detroit
Lake's
Mercies.
my team this year. Like I said earlier, I think they're going to punch their first ticket to state. A lot of Detroit Mercy bias here. A lot of Detroit Mercy bias here. I am all in on the Detroit Mercy picks commits.
To me, it's like not a state tournament if Stillwater's not there.
Disagree. They host.
I know. That's why it's like they got to be in their shed.
Over to the boys. A quick rundown of this section on the boys' side. This has been a section. Stillwater and Matamidi at the top, just exchanging blows year after year. It seems like every other year, Stillwater's in, then Matamidi, then Stillwater, then Matamidi. That's what it seems like. White Bear Lake though is
came to the DTA summit, so that might be their year.
It might. They're due because Stillwater was there. No, Matamidi. It was Matamidi's turn last year. So if history repeats itself, it would be Stillwater's turn. White Bear Lake though had been on the heels, and it has even snuck in every once in a while. Merrick over at Hill Murray, taking over that program a few years ago. Ever since then, Hill Murray has been on the rise, taking a step. It seems like another step every single year. Totino Grace and Irondale, though, they are DTA Nation members. They get a DTA bump. Are either of them going to be able to take the next step? We will see. We are obviously big fans of both of their programs, especially on the boys' side. That's section 4. Ted, who's your number one, kind of preseason ranking that maybe we should break down here first?
Yeah, so I'm trying to find exactly where I wrote it, but I did a breakdown of a couple of these teams on the blog, and it has been Matamidi versus Stillwater for the section final like 5 of the last 6 years or something like that. So those two teams have been really the two dominant programs. However, the last I guess, Matamidi Stillwater team to come out, I guess maybe that was Tartan, but they folded their program. But in 2015, White Bear Lake won the state tournament. So White Bear is the only one that has a state championship out of this group. I'll start with Matamidi. They lost a good handful of guys, but they have a ton of young players, specifically in the 2025 class. So they returned quite a few people. They got a Division I commit face-off guy, Sam Churchill, headed to Bellarmine. as well as another Division I commit, Oscar Magnuson. I think he's also headed to Bellarmine. So a couple of guys that are playing at a really high level. They get Eric Butke back and Landon Cruz, both who were, I guess, on their first line in midfield last year. They are going to have to replace a star goalie from Tommy Peer, who is now playing college somewhere, Division II, I believe. He had a 67% save percentage last year and a not what I would consider a cupcake schedule. So that's pretty impressive. And they lost a couple really good polls as well. So I really like the Zephyrs. I want them to win the section, or I think, they're a top caliber team. I just don't know. There's some question marks on some big key pieces. They really have been Fogo U though for the
That was
last
going to be
10
my
years, I
point. You
feel
go
like.
from you go from an 80% Fogo guy to a 76% Fogo. Like they, what are they? I don't know what they're feeding their Fogos. I don't know what they're doing. But take notes. Take notes. They have been pumping out Fogo after Fogo.
Yeah, and this section is loaded with 2025s across the board, all teams. At least most of the teams have strong 2025 class. I wouldn't be surprised if in the next 2 seasons we see a Section 4 team in the state final, if not win the state championship in one of the next 2 seasons while those kids are juniors and
Love it.
seniors. Um, I I think that kind of brings me to like the next team in this section that I would consider, like part of that 2-horse race is Stillwater. Uh they're a polarizing program. I feel like they've been good for a really long time and they just haven't been able to get past that section or that state semi situation for them. Running into Benilde for a couple years in a row sucks. You maybe hope that you can get a 3 or a 2 seed in state and then bump your, like, you meet Benilde in a final instead of a semi. That being said, you got to get through the best teams to win the state championship. And Stillwater, something that we've talked about a lot on air, off air, they really have no excuse to not be a top 5 team every single year, with the size of their youth program, very similar to what we talked about with the girls. Um, I would say they I don't know what happened last year, if it was just injuries or youth or a hangover from, the stick check heard around the world. Um, but they lose a couple guys, but they get a ton of dudes back. They're they get a lot of scoring. Like I said, they have a really strong 2025 class. They got athletes at D. They got an all-state poll from last year. They got a 60% Fogo, who's actually a 24, so he's a senior. Linsky, Gissy, Giesbauer, all had multiple, double-digit points last year, double-digit goals. And then probably their best player only played in 5 games last year. And Anderson Wagner, he's headed to Bellarmine next year, or sorry, in 2 years. And he's a big downhill Minnesota lacrosse midi that you can just say, like, give him the ball, get out of the way. And so, assuming that it was injury related and not something else, and he plays a full season, add him to the mix. Um, Kind of brings me to my last piece. They have a stud 2026
I was waiting
goalie.
for you to get to
He is
that.
one of the best goalies I've ever seen in my life. And that I'm kind of saving the best for last here. I know you, PMAC, have played against Stillwater live a couple years in a row here. So you've seen him in like live on field action. I'd only seen some film, so I was like, yeah, he looks good, but whatever. I finally saw him play live at the Pumpkin Shootout this fall, and he's phenomenal. Casey Mork is his name. He's been starting since he was probably like a fifth grader on this team. I don't even know, but he's yeah, I don't know. Maybe you can add some color commentary because you've kind of been at field level with this guy.
Yeah, so I honestly didn't realize he was only a freshman. I they don't post grad years, so I go to the sources when that's the situation. So I did not truly realize that he was only a freshman last year. Over a 60 save percentage, that's pretty ridiculous. And I'm just looking at his games last year. You know, he he's putting up these stats against they they don't have the best schedule in the state, but they have a very good schedule. Like they're for every chance they get, they're throwing in a Chan, a Prior Lake, um, who else? Benilde, right? They're when they can play a top team.
Chan, Minnetonka.
Yeah, Chan, Minnetonka. When they can play a top team, they play a top team, and he's still um, against Benilde last year. Um, he put up a 65 save percentage. That's that's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. Am I looking at this
Yeah,
correctly? Like that's ridiculous.
and I remember watching him this fall in a club game where, like how dialed up is the team defense in a club game, right? Like you got your basics, but it's not something you're working on 6 days a week with your team. So he's getting shots like from the crease, step downs from inside 10 yards. And I mean, he's stuffing guys, he's making kick saves, he's making body saves. He makes a save and there's a rebound, and then he dives across back to crease and he makes the next save um, against, what I would consider like one of the top club teams in Minnesota. So, um, yeah, I mean, if you got a guy like that, you can win games. And then, like I said, Anderson Wagner, 16 points and only played 5 games last year, so he's going to be a big addition to have back. They also have Bobby Appert and Isaac Johnson, who are pretty good players that I don't even think they got a lot of time last year because they were sitting behind seniors. So I, there's no reason why Stillwater shouldn't be a top 5 team this year with the players that they have.
Yeah, no, I would agree. And to the point, right? They should be. This is a team that should be. This is a program that should be. They have things dialed in. One of the biggest youth programs. A coaching staff that has been around, right? Been there, done that. So Stillwater, yeah, they're going to be right back. They're going to be right
Stillwater
back.
to me on the boys too. It's like it's
Yeah.
not really a state tournament unless Stillwater's there, but
I'm just
maybe
pulling up
this
last year's section bracket.
yeah.
But I think for me, the next team that like I feel like should be they're close is White Bear Lake. They last year, like to me, I felt like they were always in a 1-goal game, and there was controversy every week about how they lost their game, whether it's a crease violation or a weird timeout or a goal that didn't go in, but they call it a goal. Like it's always something. They do. I haven't broke down their full roster of who they lost, but I know they get back a superstar attackman, Devin Mueller. I actually wrote about him for Prep Lacrosse. Uh, this guy is an automatic lefty sharpshooter, and he's got some nice kind of inside box lacrosse moves as well. So I know they got at least one guy they can lean on. And again, a state championship caliber program of what was it, 8 years ago they won it. And they got a lot of guys that are playing year round, and I feel like they're really close, but not quite haven't been able to kind of quite break through the Matamidi Stillwater wagon that's been going on the last couple of years.
Yeah, they lost a sizable game to Stillwater. I mean, 6-15 in a what is that, a semifinal? To me, it's I'm not quite there yet. And maybe I'm still just super high on Stillwater. Even the Mott, I think I'm even still excited about Matamidi, but that's a good point to know. Maybe they're a couple years out.
Looking at this team, they had three on the offensive side of the ball. They had three players with over 50 points. They lose two of them. However, they've got a couple of players here right behind them that were young, sophomores and juniors that are going to be back. So as long as everybody, kind of everybody take that next step, everyone's kind of gets elevated, maybe one spot on the depth chart. That would help. That would help things a lot. And that's going to happen. I think a major question mark. They had two senior goalies last year that played pretty much every minute of the game. But so I think goalie's a question mark. Who's going to be next up in line between the pipes for White Bear Lake?
I think for me too, that you don't underestimate White Bear Lake. Great concessions, but also like on the boys' side, to me, they're always just kind of like a strong, heavy team that, like Ted said, they've got some people coming up. I think that to me, that's still a big gap in their section quarterfinal. Um, yeah, interesting. Moving
Ted,
on.
I know you've been
Oh,
having some internet issues. Just wrapped up with White Bear Lake as kind of like maybe the three for some of us. For me, the next team, and I kind of mentioned it under Merrick, Hill Murray, they've been kind of taking one step at a time, and I fully anticipate another step being made this year. Hill Murray, again, year after year, under kind of the new leadership, has been chipping away. They made it to a section semifinal. Again, ran into Matamidi, who is in the mix every single year in this section. I could we're gonna have to dive into this section, or sorry, this team specifically. But depending on how things shake out, matchups, how kind of like the bracket shakes out. But in the next year or two, I fully anticipate Hill Murray being in a section final.
Yeah, this is another team that has a really strong younger group, a 2025 group, kind of led by Anthony Millett. He had 43 points last year, very goal heavy, so he's kind of an initiator. If I remember, right, they don't have a ton of face-off stats, or it looks like they struggled at faceoff. That was an issue for them last year. They played a lot of defense. They also have a kid, Caden, he was a senior. So they lost a couple seniors that were good players, but I agree. They've kind of been step by step getting a little bit better. And it looks like their main goalie last year was an eighth grader.
Eighth
So,
grader.
so
Eighth grader.
and he had, he was respectable.
He did well. He did very well for himself.
Yeah, like honestly, a 57% save percentage, 8.06 goals against average. That's not maybe on the elite end for high school, but it's definitely, I would say, middle of the pack, upper middle of the pack, as an eighth grader. So they have a bright future in goal. The one thing, like, just eye test that I noticed from a few games that I watched, they spent so much time in the penalty box that they just put themselves in bad spots. Kind of like they were always like down 3 or 4 goals before they like cleaned it up and then had to kind of claw back. So maybe that, I know Merrick wants them to be physical defense and play tough. And, I respect that. But, I think maybe cleaning up some of the penalties and some of the reckless play, they have the talent to be a contender in this section. I just worry maybe a little bit about depth.
The next team up, Totino Grace. Obviously, huge fans. They're DTA Nation. They come to the summit. Are they trending? Are they going to be able to sneak into the top four? What are the things here?
Yeah, they lost some they had a great senior class last year. A great group of kids, 2023s. A few of them went on to play in college. Now, I don't know exactly who they have coming up. But last year they were they had a huge turnaround as a group, as a team. They were I'm just gonna pull it up here quick. They were 8-6 last year, but in 22 they were 2-11.
Wow.
So
Wow.
whatever they were doing, whatever the staff, I think it was a new staff last year in 23, and a lot of them came to the summit this past weekend. So they're investing their time into how they can best prepare their team to be successful, and it obviously worked from 22 to 23. A massive turnaround. They are going to have to find a way to replace some of those seniors. But, Totino Grace was a really good program there for a few years, probably like when you were in high school, PMAC. I feel like they were like in the state tournament and like top in their section. So I think that there's an opportunity for them to kind of revamp that with the leadership that they have.
And you look at their losses last year, they weren't to like cupcake teams.
No.
Like they went and played Maple Grove. Did Maple Grove beat them? Yeah, but that Maple Grove is a top 10 team.
Yeah.
Um,
Armstrong.
yeah, and then they're playing some close games against, and they battled in playoffs and got a win against Spring Lake Park. So I I I hope they're able, their next group of kids, younger kids, are able to replace, what they lost, because this is a team that, you know, could sneak into the next level, of maybe top 15, or something. That might be their next goal. I'm not sure, but I would agree with you. It appears that their staff is dedicated, bought in, and doing the right things, with the program.
Yeah, and it looks like their goalie was 2026 freshman last year as well. So again,
Young
something to
goalies in
build.
this section.
Yeah, a lot of young goalies building, like they have some stability there in what I would consider a key position, if not the most key position on the field. Um and so yeah, I think that's going to be a positive for them, moving forward.
And a lot of other teams too that have been around, been in the mix. You've got Mounds View, you've got Irondale, another big DTA Nation team. Katie, can you mute yourself? Roseville. They've been a program for a long time.
Yeah, Roseville, I think, has a sneaky good face-off guy or attackman or something. Like, I think, let me pull it up. They have a stud on their team. Let me see here. Yeah. No, it's not that. Somebody was telling me about a Roseville guy that is like super under the radar. So keep talking. Sorry I interrupted you, but
Yeah,
um,
no, but yeah, I think this section is, maybe there's a couple, maybe few teams that are going to continue in the near term, maybe dominate this section. I think there's a few programs on the rise though, and the gap I think over the next couple of seasons could close or get closer, and maybe even a couple of new teams get in the mix to really take over the section.
yeah. So they Roseville lost their leading scorer 46 points last year, but they get number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and back.
Wow.
And their face-off guy was 75% last year. They get him back. He's a senior. And I think they get their goalie back too. He was a ninth grader last year. So another 2026. So Roseville this could be a stock to buy now.
Hold on. And, okay, the number 1 seed versus 8 seed was 16-8. Like, Roseville put up 8 goals against Stillwater in a section game. A lot of these, when you get a top number 1 seed team like Stillwater, that number 1 to 8 seed game can get ugly.
Yep.
Roseville, with what sounds like a young team, sure, lost by 8, but put up 8. Like, that's
against who we deemed the greatest goalie of all time to come out of Minnesota, eventually.
So, are you saying buy Roseville stock now and maybe they're 2 years away?
I'm saying buy Roseville stock now. They were a top program back when I was in high school. That's a team we had to play to get through, to the state championship. Two of my college roommates are from Roseville. They are Roseville Raiders lacrosse players, former superstar Roseville
Was
Raiders
it even
lacrosse.
Roseville Raider? Wasn't it Rave?
No, Rave was like Rosemount, Apple Valley, Egan, Eastview
Rosemount.
Co-op.
I was thinking I was Roseville.
So Roseville area high school, shout out. I don't know if he listens to DTA, but former 36 guy, Austin Lascano Sty, Roseville Raider as well. I think they're the Raiders, aren't they?
Yeah.
I don't even know.
I think they have to be.
I think they are. Picks. Ted, who 4-1? Who are you taking preseason rankings?
Jeez. I'm gonna go. I'm going Roseville 4.
Wow.
I'm going Irondale 3. I'm going Matamidi 2 and Stillwater 1.
I'm going to go Ooh. I'm getting I thought I had it. Cuz I don't think going Actually, I like your 4 pick. I'll go different though. Totino Grace at 4. I will go Hill Murray 3. White Bear Lake 2. Stillwater 1.
Wow.
No love for the Zefs.
I'm out on them.
All right.
Katie.
I'm going to go White Bear Lake 4. No, Hill Murray 4. White Bear Lake 3. Matamidi 2, Stillwater 1.
Unanimous DTA curse for the Stillwater
Jinx.
ponies.
The Jinx.
I
The
know.
Jinx. Well, that should do it for Section 4. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for all the coaches that came to Down the Alley Coaches Summit. Thanks to our sponsor, Old Southern Barbecue.
Get your Easter hams. Get your Easter hams from them.
Yep, get the ham. They got a couple of options, I believe, and yeah, that should do it. We will be back next week with Section 5. We are 1 week closer to the season. It's going to be March before you know it, and then it's going to be April 1 before we know it. So the season is upon us. I'm fired up. Thanks for tuning in.